The funding for this video is provided by the amazing members of our Patreon. Also contributions from viewers like you. Thank you. Yeah, I started from PBS Kids. What you gonna do? Fight me? Anyway, roll the video. So hi everyone, before we get started, I would just like to include this disclaimer. Because of the subject matter, I will be making this video full-on voiceover, as I don't feel comfortable being on camera in this condition. That being said, I cried while making this, and y'all are not about to be making memes of me crying. Okay, let's begin. You want to know the kind of people that I cannot stand? I can't stand a people die every day kind of bitch. Like, congratulations, death doesn't affect you in a negative way. But for plenty of other people, it does. So kindly shut the hell up. Let's talk about Rugrats. The show that I pay more attention to the adults in this series because I just find the babies too annoying. Look, like this is why I prefer to spin off All Grown Up. But I did find a new love for the Rugrats series because I found the adults within the show to be very interesting as they felt so real. And one major aspect of the series I love was the dynamic that turned into a marriage between Chaz and Kira. Kira was divorced and Chaz was a widow. Yeah. That means that Chaz's son Chuckie didn't have a mother for a while. And it starts to make sense why Chuckie was always at Dee Dee's house. For the most part, Chuckie didn't question much of anything about his mother not being there, as they just never brought it up to them. But as time began to pass, he started to notice that something wasn't right. Like when everyone was with their mothers and Chuckie didn't have one. While Chuckie is a baby, he's not really going to understand the concept of death. But he's aware that his biological mother isn't in the picture anymore. And it's not like Chuckie is motherless, because he does have a mother later on in the series who is Kira. Like, let's look at it. Chuckie is like probably 1 year old. 1 year old, I'm pretty sure he's 1. We're going to say he's 1. His biological mother died not too long after he was born. And then Chaz married Kira while Chuckie was a baby. So it may feel like Chuckie was without a mom for a long time because of how late into the series that this happened, that being the marriage between Chaz and Kira. But Chuckie didn't age until the spinoff All Grown Up. And Chaz remarrying not long after Chuckie's mom died. It's kind of odd when you see how fast he did that. But I can't help but think about how Chaz felt about his wife passing away. Like I had mentioned earlier, that is why Chuckie was always at Dee Dee's house. Because for a while, Dee Dee was a mother figure to him, along with Betty. But Dee Dee already had a husband, and she already had 2 other children, and she was also, you know, taking care of her niece just as well, who was a hot ass mess. So when Chaz met Kira and he saw how motherly she was, that's probably why he remarried not too long after losing his wife. Not just for him, but for the sake of his son having a mother. And it was even shown that part of the reason why Chaz liked her so much is because of how motherly she was and how she worked well with kids, as she had her own daughter, Kimmy. Like, yeah, Dee Dee and Betty were good to Chuckie, but like I said, they both had their own children and were also married, so they really couldn't give him the care and attention that he needed. Chaz already had to deal with the pain of losing his wife and having to raise their son on his own, and didn't want to continue with that pain he felt because of that, and didn't want to transfer that trauma and hurt over to his son. It's no secret that people die, and we shouldn't act as if it doesn't happen. But the way people respond to death and how others deal with it can be a bit all over the place. And the way we talk about death and how we see it portrayed in the media we consume is a contribution to that. The researchers also found that the main characters in children's films were 2.5 more likely to die and 3 times more likely to be murdered than the main characters in films marketed towards adults. So, if my kids watch a movie a week, they see 34 deaths in a year, usually the death of a parent or a close family member. What is up with that? Because it's an easy plot device. What better way to thrust a character into a scenario in which they heroically redeem a terrible tragedy by going on a journey, taking back the throne, restoring the family name, and so on. The point of the movie becomes the main character rising again in the face of loss. It is the quintessential hero's journey. I don't have an issue with kids being exposed to death. I've had a lot of open conversations about it with my kids. When children's films show children thriving after terrible events, there may be some psychological benefit to that by helping kids know that there is indeed life after death. But I am worried about the pervasiveness of these stories in shaping our expectations about grief. It is important conversations to have, especially when more than 1 million Americans have so far died from COVID. The impact of children have been immense. From April 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021, dates in the pediatrics estimate that 400,000 children under the age of 18 in the U.S. lost a parent, custodial grandparent, or grandparent caregiver. Children see death over and over, and there is very little treatment of grief in pop culture. In most instances, a film shows a hero standing with the head bowed beside their open grave. The audience may observe a tear or a nod towards a period of sadness, but the character is back in action within 60 seconds, fighting the dragon, building the robot, or saving the world. Moving on from Rugrats, I want to talk about Big Hero 6, which is one of my favorite franchises of all time. I adore it. Tadashi was literally husband goals. So let's go. One thing about Big Hero 6 that stood out to me was how the series dealt with the subject of both death and grief. Yeah, we see that there is a death that is present, but we also see that there is a long-term effect of what it has on people. Because the whole story of Big Hero 6 revolves around the subject of death. The death of Hiro and Tadashi's parents is what resulted in them living with their auntie. As Hiro was only 3 when they died, it most likely didn't affect him in the same ways it did Tadashi because he remembered them much better than Hiro did. Tadashi is said to be about 21 years old when he passed away, so that means Tadashi was 8 when their parents died. And because of that, Tadashi had to be there more for his brother because he really was the only person left that was an extension of their small family. And also, did nobody find it weird that we never saw the Japanese side of the family? Anyway, but death didn't start to take a toll on Hiro until Tadashi died. And I think of the way he died too is what made it so much worse for him. Because we seen their aunt, she literally lost her family member. She was sad about that, but she also had to be strong because of the boys there. So then she ended up losing her nephew too, and that was hurtful. But as she was older than Hiro, she was able to deal with grief in a different way. But as I mentioned, Tadashi's death, Hiro was very much present when it happened because it happened in a fire and he saw Tadashi walk in the building and then that happened. So moving on to the show that came after Big Hero 6, the film, we got to see that Hiro never got over the death of his brother. Because that's one thing I can't stand when I'm watching a lot of media where someone dies and then next thing you know, they pretend like everything is okay. I like how we didn't get that with Big Hero 6. He never got over his brother dying and he doesn't have to. Like, I love how Tadashi is still brought up in the series and we do see pictures of him and mentions of him because he was an important factor to everything that's going on. He literally invented Baymax. Baymax wouldn't exist. Big Hero 6 wouldn't exist if it weren't for Tadashi. Because oftentimes when someone in a kid's show or movie dies, everyone just seems to forget about them. And I love how Big Hero 6, they want you to know if it weren't for this man, none of this would be a thing. But also, I really do love in Big Hero 6 that we had some moments where we saw that Hiro truly did miss his brother and still has so much resentment to the man responsible for his death, that being Callahan. And as the man even said, Tadashi's death wasn't even his fault. Hiro has every right not to like him. He don't. Y'all. I can't fucking stand Callahan. That was so foul of what he said to Hiro in that moment, because he basically was like, it's your fault why Tadashi's gone, and he was like, nobody told him to go back in the building. First of all, why are you setting the fucking building on fire, Callahan? You're in the wrong altogether, and you are responsible for Tadashi's death. Accept it. Like, you had no business setting that building on fire. And how Hiro feels about Callahan, the man responsible for his death, it reminded me a bit of Avatar: The Last Airbender, when Katara couldn't find herself being able to forgive the man that was responsible for the death of her mother. And I feel as if people are a bit hard on Katara when it comes to her mother's death, but her feelings are very much valid. Because her mother was taken from her, she didn't really know how to process it. Like, she saw it, y'all. Katara's young. We have to remember she's 14 years old. And then her dad left to fight, in which I understand, but like, y'all give Sokka and Katara's dad a little too much dip on his chip, because he was not in his children's life enough for my liking. Alright. But then moving on back to both Katara and Hiro, grief isn't always pretty. Grief isn't pretty at all, if we're being honest. We see Katara snap on people because of her mother, even her own brother. And also, I feel like people forget how old she is because she had to grow up faster because of the trauma in her life. She's still learning and growing and didn't realize she was wrong. And we see that she was able to fix that behavior. And I also would like to, shout out to Gran, Sokka and to Katara's grandmother, because it's so rough for, when grandparents have, their own children and then their children have kids. It's like, they're like, okay, I'll still be here to support, but I don't have to raise another child all over again. That is a lot of stress for a grandparent to deal with when they realize that the parents of their grandchildren are gone and they have to do that cycle over and over again. It can be very weighing as they're getting older, and it's just harder for them to do things. With Katara, she even wanted to hurt the person who K-worded her mother. Same thing with Hiro. He wanted to K-word the person that was responsible for his brother's death. He was angry about Tadashi dying and was set on hurting that man just because of that. And Honey Lemon literally held it down in this scene. I love her. I adore her. If Honey Lemon didn't step in to stop him, who knows what he would have done. Now, the last thing I would like to bring up is Sydney to the max. With Big Hero 6, the entire show really does revolve around the subject of death, as Sydney's mother, who is a black woman, has passed away. I do find it a bit disturbing how the show just decided to kill off the black woman, but y'all know how Disney is about black pain. Anyway, Sydney's mother in the series was named Alicia. And it's sad to see that Alicia isn't there in her life anymore. And certain things about that have contributed to why Sydney is so confused when it comes to her race. As Sydney is half white, she also is half black. We can't ignore the fact that she's half black because she has to deal with the struggles of being a mixed race girl who looks different than a lot of her non-black and just non-white peers in general. It's great that Sydney does have her grandmother in her life who does help her with things. And it's also kind of frustrating how we don't see her black grandmother enough, but anyway. But it's so sad to know that the reason that she lives with her grandmother, that being her father Max, his mother, is because Sydney doesn't have a mother. And at her age, it is important for a girl to have a mother figure in her life. But it's not like Sydney's mom isn't in the show. Sydney to the Max honestly has to be one of the smartest children's programming to have come out in the recent years, because they actually found a way to make the audience care about Alicia. It's kind of frustrating when you're watching a lot of kid movies and whatnot, and they want you to care about the person that's died, but sometimes they don't really get enough screen time and you can't really process that. When it comes to Frozen with Anna and Elsa, I can't stand that damn movie, but one thing in particular that kind of frustrated me about it is that we're supposed to be sad about Anna and Elsa losing their parents, but it just doesn't sit long enough. We don't really know these people and we don't know anything about them. We just know that they are the parents of the two leads in the film and they're rich. Like, that's just kind of all that we got. And I know Frozen 2 ended up going more in detail about the mother's background, but we're just talking about Frozen 1 for here, okay? They didn't really give us much of anything to work with and wanting us to care. And in the beginning, that's how it was with Sydney's mother. We just, oh, we know she's dead. We barely even saw her. But as the show continued to go on, we started to see flashbacks of Alicia. And we started to see how Alicia and Max, Sydney's father, fall in love. And it makes the death so much more painful for the viewers, because while the show is focused on Sydney, it's focused on Max too, as we do get to see Max a lot as an adult, but the moments that really made him who he is, the man that he is today, really come from his childhood and him meeting Alicia. He's reminiscing on the time that he spent with Alicia. And that's what makes Alicia's death so much more painful, because we saw that he truly did love her, flaws and all. And what makes it hurt even more is that we see why Max is so protective of his daughter. Because her mom died and he's so afraid that he'll lose her too. We often talk about people being sad when fictional characters die. And I think with Alicia's death, they really did a smart way of wanting the audience to care about this person who's passed. Because with Hannah Montana, we were aware that her mother was dead, but we really couldn't care much about her because we didn't know anything about her. We barely even know what she looked like. Sydney to the Max actually took the time to let the audience get to know who Alicia was and why we should care about her and why we should be more understanding of why Sydney is struggling with her blackness. And not just her blackness, but just girlhood in general. We talk about people being sad when fictional characters die. Like, I remember when I was 18 and the second Descendants movie came out, everybody knows, like, I love Harriyannahook. He is literally me. I am him. Somebody wrote a fic where Harriyannahook died and I was crying so hard. But then I had to think about why I cried so much. And then I also had to think about why I cried so much when I watched the first SpongeBob movie. You know, that scene where SpongeBob and Patrick dried out and basically died. Because when you enjoy fictional characters, they start to feel like people to you. As Anna and Elsa's parents and, you know, Miley's mother and Hannah Montana, while they were people, they honestly felt more like plot devices because their death really was just a way to progress the main character's story. But Sydney to the Max turned Alicia from being just a plot device into an actual person, which makes it sting even more. We get to know Alicia. We can start to like understand her. And then to see when you cut in the future and that she's not there, it's very much painful. Like I said, because when you enjoy fictional characters, they start to feel like people to you, someone you know. I've been watching SpongeBob since I was 3 years old, so I felt like I knew SpongeBob and Patrick pretty well because I saw them every single day. Our TV stayed on SpongeBob, okay? SpongeBob reruns go off in this house. Even though SpongeBob and Patrick were brought back to life, I can't help but think of the pain I felt when they were gone. And this was before the internet could spoil the movie for you, so I really thought that that was the end of them. It has officially been 1 year since my mother died. And during this period, that being the span of 1 year, 5 more of my family members passed away just as well, with 4 of them being my mother's siblings and a cousin who is also on my mother's side of the family just as well. But before my mother died, both of my grandparents died months before just as well. So I lost 7 of the most important people in my life in the time span of 2 years, with one of them dying because of COVID. I am not okay. It's not the fact that I lost so many people in my life. It's the fact that I lost so many people in my life in a short period of time, and also due to a virus that plenty of people stopped taking seriously. This is why I get so annoyed when I see people making jokes and memes about Natalie from Miraculous Ladybug dying. Because like I said, I'm not taught to tell nobody what to do. You want to make the memes, fine, I don't care. I just don't want to see them. As we do get attached to fictional characters, they start to feel like we know them. And I was so hurt when I saw that she couldn't even walk anymore on her own. And the thought about my favorite fictional characters dying is the last thing I want on my mind at this stage in my life. Because death has weighed on me so much this entire year. And because of the effects of death on me, I have become more sensitive to things. I don't have the tolerance to go back and forth with people. And more things annoy me more than ever now. We as a society really don't know how to handle death and grief. And I low-key blame the entertainment industry. Because we see when people die, everyone just expects them to go back to normal and on with their lives. And no. Like, yeah, life goes on. But death will always hurt. The pain doesn't go away. You just learn how to deal with it in different ways. And people don't prepare you for those moments where it's just too much to bear and you can't even leave the house for 2 days or so. Because of the effects of death on me, I spend less time on social media now. I don't go back and forth with people anymore. The block button is now my best friend. I started reading more again. I started drawing again. I started rewatching one of my favorite shows of all time, The Parkers. I started watching the Wayans Bros. And I also started watching Word Girl. I literally wrote 2 novellas, and I am in the process of writing a third. And I am turning one of my other novellas into a comic. I've had to figure out ways to deal with grief and death. But the pain I felt because of it won't go away. I just learned how to take my mind off of it a bit for a few activities I enjoy. Chaz never really got over the death of his wife, of his child, Chuckie. But he learned how to deal with it, and that was by remarrying. Max never really knew how to deal with the death of Alicia. But moving back with his mother and making sure Sydney has good people in her life is how he was able to deal with it and cope with it and make sure she's okay. Katara never got over her mother being K-worded. And she doesn't have to. Same with Hiro. They have every right to have such resentment towards the people that caused them so much pain. Because death is not easy to deal with. It really fucking sucks. And grief is not beautiful. It's disgusting. It's painful. Sometimes I can't eat for almost 2 days straight. Sometimes I sleep too much. Sometimes I end up crying much, much longer than I intend to. And sometimes I just have issues with work. I can't go to work sometimes. Sometimes I can't go to school. But I have to figure out how to work around that. You'll be doing fine 1 minute, and then you're just hit with the fact that somebody important in your life is gone, and then you just shut down. We need to do better as a society when it comes to the subject of death and grief. And I think a start to that is how we can do better about portraying this in the media we consume.
Girls will just blow your mind. Buttercup like villains 3 at a time. Bubbles will smile while kicking your butt, and Blossom will lead them out of their rut. Cherish and Powerpuff, 2 of a kind. Both wanna save the world before bedtime. From Townsville, Memphis, New York to LA, the Powerpuff Girls are just here to stay.